I received an inheritance of $5 million and decided to put my son to the test. I called him and told him I'd lost everything that I needed to move into his house the very next day. He responded with enthusiasm. He told me yes, that I should come. But the next morning, when I arrived with my suitcases at his front door, I could not believe what I was seeing. And what I discovered that day changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. My name is Eleanor. I am 71 years old. And until a week ago, I lived in a small apartment on the north side of the city. A modest place with walls that held 40 years of memories, yellowing photographs, and the silence of someone who learned to live alone. My husband died 8 years ago. Since then, life became a silent routine. I would wake up, prepare coffee, look out the window, and wait. Wait for what I do not know. Maybe I waited to feel something again. Maybe I waited for someone to knock on the door and remind me that I still mattered, but no one came. The days passed identical, one after another, like blurry copies of a life that once had color. I worked for 35 years in a textile factory. I got up every dawn, took the same bus, did the same job. I do not complain. That gave me a roof, food, and the possibility of raising my son Michael. I raised him alone after his father left when he was barely 6 years old. I did what I could. We did not have luxuries, but we never lacked anything essential. I taught him to be honest, to work hard, to respect others. Or at least that is what I thought I taught him, because over the years, when he grew up, when he got married, something changed between us. The calls became shorter, the visits more spaced out. There was always an excuse, work, traffic, commitments, and I learned not to insist, not to bother to occupy the least possible space in his life. I lived convinced that this was normal, that children grow up, leave, build their own lives, that a mother must learn to let go. But deep down, very deep down, I always wondered if he really cared. If he ever thought of me when he closed his eyes at night, if he remembered the times I went without eating so he could have new shoes, if he valued the sacrifices I made without saying a word. I never claimed anything from him. I never asked for anything in return, because that is how I was raised, to give without expecting to love, without conditions. But unconditional love hurts when it is one-sided. 2 weeks ago, I received a call that changed everything. It was a lawyer. His name was Robert. He had a formal but kind voice. He told me that a distant uncle, someone I barely remembered, had passed away abroad. He had no children. He had no wife, and in his will, he had left me as the sole heir. $5 million. When I heard that figure, I thought it was a joke. I thought someone was tricking me, but no, it was real. I had to go to the lawyer office, sign documents, listen to legal explanations that I barely understood. And when I left that place, I walked down the street as if I were floating. $5 million. Me, who never had more than $1,000 saved in my entire life. Me who counted every coin before going to the market. Me who got used to living with just enough. That night, I could not sleep. I sat in the living room, staring at the empty walls, feeling the weight of that news as if it were a rock on my chest. And then, in the middle of the silence, a thought came. A small thought, at first, barely a whisper in my mind. What would happen if Michael knew? What would he do? How would he react? And that thought grew, expanded, became a question I could not ignore. I needed to know if my son loved me for who I am, or if he only tolerated me because it was his obligation. I needed to know if he would be there for me if I had nothing. If I fell, if I broke, if I lost everything, would he come to pick me up? Or would he leave me alone, like so many times I had felt in recent years? I know it sounds cruel. I know that testing your own son is not something a mother should do. But after so many years of feeling invisible, of wondering if I really mattered, I needed an answer. I needed to know the truth. Even if it hurt, even if it broke my heart, because living in doubt is worse than living in certainty. Even if that certainty is painful. So I made a decision. I would not tell him anything about the inheritance. Instead, I would make him believe that I had lost everything that I was in a desperate situation, that I needed his help. And depending on his reaction, I would know who my son really was. I would know if the values I tried to instill in him still lived in him, or if they had been lost along the way. I spent 3 days preparing. I rehearsed the words in my head over and over again. I thought about every detail of the lie I was about to tell. It hurt to do it. It hurt to have to lie to him. But I needed that truth more than I needed to keep the peace. Because peace built on doubt is not peace. It is just an uncomfortable truce with reality. And I was already tired of living in that truce. I wanted to know. I needed to know. Finally, the day came. It was a Tuesday afternoon around 5. I sat on the living room sofa with the phone in my hand, feeling my fingers tremble. I took several deep breaths, trying to calm the nerves that ran through my body like electric current. I dialed Michael's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Every ring felt eternal. I was about to hang up to forget all that absurd plan to settle for not knowing. But then I heard his voice. "Hello, Mom," he said. He sounded distracted, as if he were doing something else while talking to me. I heard background noise, maybe the television or music. I felt a lump in my throat, but I kept going. "Michael, I need to talk to you, I said with a trembling voice. Something very serious happened. There was a brief silence on the other end. What happened, Mom? Are you okay? He asked with a tone that tried to sound worried but still had that air of being half present in the conversation. I lost everything, I told him. The words came out easier than I expected, as if my mouth had decided to believe its own lie. I had problems with the bank with some debts that I could not pay. They are going to take away the apartment. I have nowhere to go. I have no money to rent another place. I paused. I let the silence do its work. I need to stay with you for a while, Michael, just until I can solve it. It will not be much time, I promise you. I just need a place to sleep while I find a way to get ahead. The silence that followed was different, heavier. I could almost hear his thoughts on the other side of the line. I imagined his face, his eyes looking for a way out, an excuse. I waited. I counted the seconds in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he spoke. Of course, Mom, come over. You can stay with us as long as you need. Do not worry about anything. Tomorrow, you can come. I will prepare the guest room. Everything is going to be okay. I felt something strange in my chest when I heard those words. It was a mixture of relief and guilt. Relief because my son had said yes, that he would receive me, that he would not leave me on the street. Guilt because I was lying to him, because I was manipulating the situation to get an answer. But there was also something else, something I could not define clearly. A small alarm in my intuition telling me that his answer had been too fast, too perfect, as if he had been waiting for me to say exactly that, as if he already knew what to say. Thank you, my love, I replied with a broken voice, letting the tears that threatened to come out give authenticity to my performance. You do not know how much this means to me. Tomorrow morning, I will be there with my things. Do not bring much, Mom. He interrupted me. Only the essentials. There's not much space here, but we will manage. Yes, of course, I told him. Just a few suitcases. See you tomorrow then. Rest, Mom, he told me before hanging up. Everything is going to work out well. When the call ended, I sat there with the phone still in my hand, looking at the screen that had turned black. It had worked. Michael had said yes. He had opened the doors of his house to me. I should feel happy, relieved, proud of having raised a son capable of helping his mother in a difficult moment. But that strange feeling would not go away. That little voice in my head whispering that something was not right. I tried to ignore it. I told myself that I was being paranoid, that my own lies were making me doubt everything, that my son had responded exactly as a good son should respond, but the doubt was already planted, growing like weeds in my mind. That night, I packed 2 suitcases. I put in clothes, some personal hygiene items, old photographs, a book I never finished reading. While I folded each garment, while I put away each object, I felt as if I were preparing for a trip with no return. As if crossing the door of Michael House the next day, something fundamental would change forever. I did not know exactly what, but I felt it in my bones. That silent certainty that only experience and years give you. I slept little. I woke up several times during the night, looking at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the early morning, the occasional cars passing by the street, the distant bark of a dog, the hum of the refrigerator. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I was already awake, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of cold coffee between my hands. I looked around. That apartment had been my refuge for so long. Every corner had a story. The stain on the wall where Michael had thrown a ball as a child. The window from where I used to watch him play in the street. The table where we ate dinner together thousands of times. Where I did his homework with him. Where we celebrated his birthdays with simple cakes and cheap candles. All that was still there intact, waiting for me. But I was about to leave towards the unknown. At 8 in the morning, I called a taxi. The driver helped me take down the suitcases. We got into the car and I gave him Michael's address. He lived in a middle-class neighborhood on the other side of the city, in a small but pretty house that he had bought 3 years ago with his wife Sarah. I'd only been there twice, one when they moved, another at Christmas last year. The 2 visits were brief, uncomfortable, full of forced silences and smiles that did not reach the eyes. Sarah was always polite to me, but distant, as if I were an unwanted guest, but tolerable out of courtesy. She never said anything bad to me. She never disrespected me. But she did not make me feel welcome either. And Michael never said anything about it. He never defended my place in his life. He just let things be as they were, without interfering, without taking sides. The trip took 40 minutes. I looked out the window the whole way, watching the streets pass the buildings, the people walking in a hurry towards their jobs or their lives. I wondered how many of them would be living their own lives, their own secret tests, their own family doubts. The taxi finally stopped in front of Michael's house. I paid the driver, took down the suitcases, and stood on the sidewalk looking at that beige house with its small front garden and its dark wooden door. I took a deep breath. This is it, I told myself. There's no turning back. I walked towards the door, dragging the suitcases behind me. Every step felt heavy, loaded with expectation and fear. I reached the front. I raised my hand to ring the doorbell. But before I could do it, something made me stop dead. There was a sign that should not be there. And when I read what it said, I felt like the ground opened under my feet. For sale. Those 2 words stuck in the front garden like a stake in my heart. A large sign, white with red letters, impossible to ignore. For sale. I let go of the suitcases. They fell to my feet with a dull thud that I barely registered. My eyes could not look away from that sign. I blinked several times, thinking that maybe I was seeing wrong, that my tired eyes were playing a trick on me. But no, there it was. Clear, real, undeniable. I approached the door. I felt my legs trembling. I rang the doorbell once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. Absolute silence. I pressed my ear to the door, trying to hear any sound from inside. Steps. Voices, music, something. But the house was dead empty. I knocked harder now, with my knuckles hitting the wood with growing desperation. "Michael!" I shouted. "Michael, it is me, your mom. Open, please." My voice sounded strange, high-pitched, broken, but no one answered. I walked towards the window. I leaned in, covering my eyes with my hands to see better through the glass. The curtains were drawn, but I could see some spaces. The living room was empty. There was no furniture. There was nothing, only bare floors and white walls. I felt a cold go through my body, a cold that had nothing to do with the weather. It was the cold of understanding of the horror that begins to take shape when the pieces of a terrible puzzle begin to fit together. I moved away from the window, took a few steps back, unable to process what I was seeing, and then I heard a voice behind me. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you looking for someone?" I turned around sharply. It was an older woman, probably my age, with gray hair tied in a bun, dressed in a light green sweater and denim pants. She had a shopping bag in her hand. She looked like the typical curious neighbor, but kind. "Yes," I said, trying to control the tremor in my voice. "I am looking for my son, Michael. He lives here or lived here. What happened?" "Why is that sign there?" The woman made a grimace of understanding, mixed with pity. "Oh, you are Michael, mother," she said, nodding. "I am Grace. I live in the house next door. I saw you a couple of times when you came to visit." Yes, I answered with impatience. "Do you know where my son is? What happened here?" Grace put her bag on the ground and came a little closer. Her expression became serious, almost uncomfortable. "Look, ma'am, I do not know exactly what happened, but last night there was a lot of movement here. I saw a moving truck. I saw Michael and his wife Sarah taking things out in a hurry. They seemed to be in a big hurry. I went out to ask him if everything was okay, and Sarah barely answered me. She said they had a family emergency that they had to leave urgently. She did not give me more details. They loaded what they could into the truck and left. It must have been around 10 at night. I felt my mouth go dry. Last night, I repeated almost voiceless. But if I called him yesterday afternoon, if he told me to come today to prepare the guest room. Grace looked at me with those eyes that say more than words. with that look people give you when they know you are discovering something painful and they do not know how to help you. "I am very sorry, Eleanor," she said with genuine compassion. "I do not know what to tell you. I just know they left last night and left the house empty. Early this morning, someone from the real estate agency came to put up the sign. I put a hand to my chest. I felt like I could not breathe well. My son, my own son. He had told me yes to come, that I would stay with him. And as soon as we hung up the phone, as soon as that conversation ended, he packed his things and fled. He fled from me. He fled from his own mother." The pain I felt at that moment was not physical, but it was as real as if they had stuck a knife in my stomach. It was a pain that rose from the belly to the throat, that squeezed my heart, that made me want to scream and cry at the same time. Grace put a hand on my shoulder. "It is okay, ma'am. Do you want to come into my house for a moment? Drink water. Sit down." I shook my head. "I need to find him," I said. "I need to know why he did this. Do you have any idea where they could have gone?" Grace sighed. "Honestly, no. We never talked much with them. They were very reserved. But wait, maybe Patricia from across the street knows something. She and Sarah sometimes talked." Grace took me across the street to a house painted pale yellow. She knocked on the door, and a younger woman, perhaps about 50 years old, came out with glasses and a friendly expression. Grace quickly explained the situation to her. Patricia looked at me with a mixture of surprise and sorrow. "Good Lord," she said. "How horrible! Look, ma'am, I do not know much either, but yesterday I saw Sarah very nervous. I saw her talking on the phone in the garden. She seemed upset. I heard some of what she was saying. I could not help it because she was speaking quite loudly. She was saying something like, 'We cannot let her stay here. We have to leave before she arrives.' I thought she was talking about some problem with his family or something like that. But now that you tell me this, I think she was talking about you." Patricia's words fell on me like stones. "We cannot let her stay here. We have to leave before she arrives, before I arrived." My own daughter-in-law had convinced my son to abandon his house to flee, to leave me planted at the door as if I were an undesirable stranger. And Michael had accepted. He had not fought. He had not defended me. He had simply packed his bags and left. I leaned on Patricia's doorframe. I felt my legs were not responding well. The two women held me. They helped me sit on a step. "Breathe, Eleanor," Grace told me. Breathe deep, but I could not. The air did not enter my lungs well. Everything was spinning. Years of sacrifices, of sleepless nights, of working until my hands were destroyed, years of giving him everything I could with the little I had. And now this silent, cowardly betrayal hidden behind a for sale sign. Patricia went into her house and came back with a glass of water. She gave it to me, and I drank slowly, feeling how the cold liquid went down my throat. "Ma'am," Patricia said with a soft voice, "I do not want to meddle where I am not called, but I think you deserve to know something else. Yesterday morning, before they left, I saw Sarah talking to a neighbor from the other side. She was asking him if he knew of cheap apartments for rent in another area. She said something like, 'We need to disappear for a while. We do not want anyone to know where we are.' The neighbor recommended a place towards the south of the city near the downtown market district. I do not know if they went there, but it is the only thing I heard. South of the city near the downtown market. It was an area I knew well. I had lived there many years ago when Michael was small. It was a modest neighborhood with old buildings and affordable rents, the kind of place where someone would hide if they did not want to be found, but could not pay much either. I saved that information in my mind like a painful treasure. I stood up slowly. Grace and Patricia looked at me with genuine concern. "Thank you," I told them. "Thank you for telling me the truth." They nodded. "If you need anything," Eleanor Grace said, "do not hesitate to knock on the door." I nodded without saying more. I went back to Michael's house. I picked up my suitcases from the ground. I looked at them for a long moment. I had packed those suitcases thinking I would come to stay with my son, to share his roof, to receive his help. In a moment of invented need, the need was now real. Not for money, for answers, for justice, to understand how the boy I raised had become the man who abandoned me. I walked to the corner and stopped a taxi. I gave the driver the address of my apartment. During the entire return trip, I did not say a word. I just looked out the window, processing, feeling, understanding. My test had worked. I had obtained my answer. But it was not the answer my heart expected. It was much worse. I arrived at my apartment around 11 in the morning. I went up the stairs, slowly dragging the suitcases that now weighed double. Not because of their content, but because of all the pain they carried. I opened the door and entered. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The cup of cold coffee still on the kitchen table. The curtains half open. The dense silence of a place that knows something has changed, even if nothing has moved. I dropped the suitcases in the entrance and walked to the sofa. I sat there, and for the first time since I saw that sign, I let the tears come out. I cried. I cried like I had not cried since my husband's funeral. I cried for the naivety of having believed that my son was different. I cried for the years invested in creating someone who in the end saw me as a burden. I cried for that version of myself that yesterday still had hope. I cried until there were no more tears left, only a hollow emptiness in the chest and a bitter certainty in the mouth. When I finally calmed down, when the crying turned into irregular breaths and swollen eyes, I got up and went to the kitchen. I prepared more coffee. I needed to think clearly. I needed to decide what to do now. because one thing was clear. This was not going to stay like this. I was not going to allow Michael and Sarah to believe they could treat me this way without consequences. I was not going to let them think that I was so weak, so insignificant, that they could simply flee and forget about me. I sat at the table with the hot coffee between my hands. I thought about what Patricia had told me south of the city near the downtown market. It was a big area, but not impossible to cover. I knew that neighborhood. I knew where the older apartment buildings were the ones that rented cheapest. If Sarah had asked for economical places, it was because they did not want to spend much. They probably thought it was something temporary that I would eventually give up and stop looking for them. But they did not know me as well as they thought. I finished my coffee and picked up the phone. I dialed Michael's number. It rang several times, but he did not answer. I tried again. Nothing. A third time. Voicemail. Hi, I am Michael. Leave your message. His voice on the recording sounded happy, carefree, a version of him I no longer recognized. I hung up without leaving a message. Then I wrote him a text message. Michael, I need to talk to you. It is urgent. Please contact me. Send. I saw the 2 gray checks indicating the message had been delivered. I waited 5 minutes, 10, 15, nothing. He had not even read it. I lay back on the sofa and closed my eyes. I was tired physically and emotionally exhausted, but I could not sleep. My mind would not stop spinning, replaying yesterday's conversation over and over again. Of course, Mom, come over. You can stay with us as long as you need. Those words that sounded so comforting yesterday now were like knives, lies wrapped in false affection. Perfect acting of a son who learned to say the right thing while planning to do exactly the opposite. And Sarah, I always knew she did not want me around. I always felt it in her cold gaze, in her forced smiles, in the way she found excuses so visits were short. But I never thought she would go this far, that she would convince Michael to abandon his own house just to avoid me. What kind of person does that? What kind of poison did she put in my son's head so he would accept something so cruel? I spent the rest of the day in a fog. I ate something simple because my body needed it, although I was not hungry. I took a long bath, trying to wash away not only the sweat, but also the feeling of humiliation that had stuck to my skin. I dressed in comfortable clothes and sat in front of the window to watch the sunset. The sky was painted orange and violet, those colors that normally seemed beautiful to me. But today only reminded me that the day was ending, and I still had no answers, no confrontation, no closure. At 8 at night, I received a notification on my phone. It was a message from an unknown number. For a second, my heart jumped, thinking it could be Michael from another phone. I opened the message. Lainer, I am the lawyer, Robert. I just wanted to confirm that you received all the information about the inheritance. If you have questions, I am at your disposal. We agreed to meet next week to finalize the papers. Have a good night. The inheritance, $5 million. I had almost forgotten it in the middle of all this emotional chaos. That money that was going to change my life. That money that had given me the idea to test Michael. And now, ironically, that same money had become the answer to a question I never wanted to ask out loud. My son was not there for me when he thought I had nothing. So what would happen when he knew I had $5 million? The answer was so obvious, it almost hurt to think it. I stayed awake late that night, planning, thinking, imagining scenarios. At 2:00 in the morning, I finally made a decision. I was going to find Michael and Sarah. I was going to confront them face to face, but I would not tell them anything about the inheritance yet. First, I wanted to see how they reacted, what excuses they invented, if at least they had the decency to feel shame for what they had done. And then, depending on that conversation, I would decide what to do with the money and with them. The next morning, I got up early. I dressed in practical clothes, dark pants, and a gray blouse. I tied my hair in a ponytail. I saw myself in the mirror. My eyes were still swollen from yesterday crying. But there was something different in my expression, a new hardness, a determination that was not there before. 71 years carrying everything in silence, being the selfless mother who never claimed anything. But that time was over. Today I was going to claim. Today I was going to demand answers. I took my purse, some cash, and left the apartment. I took the bus towards the south of the city. The trip was long, almost an hour, crossing avenues full of morning traffic, street vendors. On every corner, people running towards their jobs. I got off near the Central Market just as Patricia had told me. The area was just as I remembered it. Old buildings of 3 or 4 floors, peeling paint, electric cables hanging dangerously low. Small shops with faded signs. I started walking through the surrounding streets looking for apartment buildings. There were several, too many. I realized this was going to be harder than I thought. I could not simply knock on every door asking for Michael. I needed to be smarter. I entered a grocery store on the corner. An older lady was attending behind the counter. I bought a bottle of water, and while I paid, I asked with a casual tone, "Excuse me, ma'am, do you know buildings around here that rent apartments? I am looking for my son, who just moved to this area, but I lost the exact address." The woman looked at me with those eyes that have seen everything in life. "There are several, my dear," she said. "The Santander building is 2 blocks from here. That one always has apartments available. There is also the Los Alamos residential right behind the market and the San Miguel building on the main avenue. Those are the most common around here." I thanked her and left the store with my mental list of places to check. I started with the Santander building. I went up to the 2nd floor where there was a small sign that said administration. I knocked on the door. A middle-aged man with a mustache and a half-buttoned shirt opened. "Good morning," I told him. "I am looking for information about an apartment that was rented recently. My son and his wife I think they arrived the day before yesterday. The man looked at me with distrust. I cannot give information about tenants, ma'am. It is privacy policy. I understand. I told him, trying to sound desperate without exaggerating.
It is just that I had a family emergency and lost contact with them. I just want to know if they are here. His name is Michael. Hers Sarah. They are young. He is in his 30s. The man shook his head. Doesn't ring a bell. The only ones who rented this week were an older couple and a single student. I am sorry. I went down the stairs feeling defeated but not surrendered. There were still 2 more buildings left. I walked towards the Los Alamos residential. It was a bigger building, 5 floors with a cream-colored facade stained by humidity and time. The main door was open. There was no security or doorman. I entered directly into the lobby that smelled of humidity and fried food. There was a board with apartment numbers, but no administrative office in sight. I went up floor by floor, looking, listening. On the 3rd floor, I heard voices arguing in one of the apartments. I approached the door, trying to distinguish the voices, but they were not familiar. I kept going up. On the 4th floor, at the end of the hall, I noticed that one of the doors had a new doormat. The other apartments had old doormats or none at all. That detail caught my attention. I approached slowly with my heart pounding in my chest. I stood in front of that door, holding my breath, trying to hear something from inside. Silence. Nothing. I knocked softly. Once, twice. I waited. Nothing. I knocked again, a little harder. Still nothing. I went down, frustrated. Maybe it was not that building. Maybe I was obsessing without reason. I went out to the street and walked towards the San Miguel building on the main avenue. It was the farthest of the 3. It took me 15 minutes to get there, walking. When I arrived, I saw it was a tidier building than the previous ones, with a glass door at the entrance and an intercom. There was a list of names next to the buttons. I started reading them one by one. Apartment 201, the Johnson family. 202, G. Miller. 203, no name. 204, M. Davis. M. Davis. Michael Davis. That was my son's last name. I felt my pulse accelerate. It could be a coincidence. It could be another person. But something in my instinct told me no. I pressed the button for apartment 204. I waited. Nothing. I pressed again, holding it longer. Silence. I pressed a 3rd time, and then finally I heard Sarah's voice through the intercom. "Who is it?" she said with an annoyed, impatient tone. I froze for a second. It was her. I had found them. I swallowed saliva and spoke with a voice as calm as I could. "Sarah, it is me, Eleanor. I need to speak with you and with Michael." The silence that followed was so heavy, I could almost feel it go through the intercom.
Then I heard murmurs on the other side, voices whispering something that sounded like a muffled argument. Finally, she spoke again. "We are not here. You have the wrong apartment." And she cut the communication. "We are not here." The most ridiculous phrase someone can say when they just answered the intercom.
I pressed the button again. Nothing again. Silence. They were in there, ignoring me, hiding like children who believe that if they close their eyes, no one can see them. I felt the rage rise up my throat like hot lava. I was not going to allow this, not after everything. I waited. I stood at the entrance of the building, waiting. I knew eventually someone would enter or leave, and I could sneak in. I did not have to wait long. 10 minutes later, a young woman arrived with supermarket bags. She opened the door with her key, and I approached quickly. "Excuse me," I said with a kind smile. "I am going to my son's apartment, but he forgot to buzz me in." The woman looked at me, saw my age. She probably thought
I was harmless and let me pass. "Thank you, my dear," I told her. I went up the stairs to the second floor. Apartment 204 was at the end of the hall to the right. I walked there with firm, determined steps. I reached the door.
I could hear movement on the other side. Low voices, steps.
I knocked on the door with force. "Michael," I shouted. "I know you are there. Open the door right now." The movement on the other side stopped. Absolute silence. I knocked again, harder. "I am not leaving until you open up and explain to me what the hell is happening. You can leave me standing here all day if you want, but I will not move." I waited 30 seconds. That felt eternal. And then I heard steps approaching the door. The sound of the lock. The door opened just a few inches. It was Michael. His face appeared in the crack, pale with dark circles under his eyes, with an expression of guilt mixed with fear. "Mom," he said with a low voice. "What are you doing here? What am I doing here?" I repeated, feeling my voice tremble with pure indignation. "What am I doing here, Michael? I came to your house as you told me. I arrived with my suitcases like we agreed, and I found a for sale sign and the house empty. You stood me up. You fled. You fled from your own mother. That is what I am doing here. I came for you to explain why." Michael lowered his gaze. He could not hold my eyes. "Mom, he began to say, but stopped. Sarah appeared behind him. She had her arms crossed and a hard expression on her face. "Eleanor, this is invasion of privacy," she said with a cold tone. "You cannot come to our apartment like this without warning." I laughed. A bitter, dry laugh without humor. Invasion of privacy. Sarah, seriously, yesterday, my son told me to come live with them.
He told me to prepare my things, and you fled in the middle of the night. Who invaded whose trust here? Michael finally looked up. Mom, it was not like that. He said it was an emergency. We had to move fast.
And do not lie to me. I interrupted him.
The neighbors told me everything. They heard Sarah there. You had to leave before I arrived. It was not an emergency, Michael. It was an escape. A cowardly escape, because you did not want to take care of me when you thought I had nothing.
Sarah took a step forward. Look, ma'am, she said with a controlled voice, but cold as ice. The truth is, we cannot support you. We barely make ends meet for ourselves. Michael does not have a stable job. I earn minimum wage. We do not have space or resources for another person. He wanted to tell you yes because he felt sorry for you, but I made him see reality. We cannot, period. Her words were like slaps, every phrase calculated to hurt. But what hurt me the most was seeing Michael standing there without defending anything, without saying anything, just timidly nodding to everything his wife said. So, why did you not tell me the truth? I asked my son, directly ignoring Sarah. Why did you not have the courage to tell me you could not help me? Why lie? Why make me believe yes and then flee like a thief in the night? Michael opened his mouth, but Sarah spoke first. Because you do not understand, ma'am. You have always been like this, dramatic, manipulative, always playing the victim. Michael told me how it was when he was a child, always reminding him everything you sacrificed for him, making him feel guilty for existing. And now, you come with this story that you lost everything. How do we know it is true? How do we know it is not another one of your manipulations to force Michael to take care of you forever? I felt my breath cut off. Manipulative, dramatic, making him feel guilty for existing. Those words coming out of Sarah's mouth, but clearly planted there by private conversations with my son. Conversations where Michael had reinterpreted his entire childhood, where he had turned my sacrifices into burdens, my love into manipulation. I looked at Michael, looking for some sign that he did not believe that Sarah was exaggerating, but he stayed there quiet with his head down, without contradicting anything. It is true, Michael, I asked with a broken voice. Is that how you see everything I did for you? As manipulation, as drama. He finally looked at me. His eyes were red, shiny, but not from tears of sadness, but from discomfort. Mom, it is not that, he started. Sarah interrupted him again. Look, ma'am, enough. We need you to leave. We have nothing more to talk about. If you really lost everything, go to social services. Ask the government for help. But do not involve us in your problems. In that moment, something broke inside me. It was not dramatic or noisy. It was silent, like when a glass breaks underwater. A clean, definitive, irreversible break. I looked at Sarah, then at Michael, then at Sarah again, and then I spoke with a calm I did not even know I had. Okay, I said. I understand perfectly. I am not going to bother you anymore, but I want Michael to tell me. I want to hear it from his mouth. I want him to look me in the eyes and tell me he cannot help me, that he does not want to help me,
That he prefers to leave me alone on the street.
I want to hear him say that. Sarah was going to speak, but Michael raised a hand, stopping her. He looked at me for the first time in that entire conversation. And he looked straight into my eyes, and with a trembling voice almost inaudible, he said, "I am sorry, Mom. I cannot. We cannot. It is better this way." I nodded slowly. "Better this way." I repeated, "For whom, Michael? For whom is it better?" He did not answer. He just lowered his gaze again. Sarah closed the door in my face without saying another word. I heard the sound of the lock turning. I stood there in that empty hallway, looking at the closed door, processing what had just happened. I walked away from that door slowly, as if I were walking in the middle of a nightmare from which I could not wake up. I went down the stairs, holding onto the railing, because I felt my legs weak, trembling. I went out of the building into the midday light. The sun was high, bright, indifferent to my pain. People passed around me busy in their own lives with no idea that I had just lost something fundamental. I had not lost my son in that moment. I had lost him a long time ago. Only now I finally knew. I walked aimlessly for several minutes. My feet took me to a small square nearby near the market. I sat on a concrete bench under the shade of an old tree. There were children playing in the distance, mothers watching them, street vendors offering fruits and sodas. Life continued as always. The world did not stop because my heart was shattered. I took out my phone and looked at it for a long time without knowing what to do with it. Part of me wanted to call someone to tell someone what had happened, but I had no close friends. My coworkers had drifted away after my retirement. My family was small and scattered. I was alone, completely alone. And that loneliness now had a different weight. Before it was circumstantial loneliness. Now it was loneliness of abandonment, of rejection, of being considered a burden by the only person who should have valued me unconditionally. I thought about Sarah, about her poisonous words, dramatic, manipulative, making him feel guilty for existing. How was it possible that someone reinterpreted love in that way? How was it possible that working 3 shifts to buy him school supplies was manipulation? That giving up my own dreams so he could study was making him feel guilty. That giving him everything I had, everything I was, became something negative in his adult narrative. And the worst was not that Sarah thought that. The worst was that Michael had allowed it. He had accepted it. He had made it his own. I wondered at what moment everything twisted. At what moment my son stopped seeing me as his mother
and started seeing me as an obstacle. Maybe it was gradual.
Maybe Sarah was planting those ideas little by little, year after year, poisoning every memory with her twisted interpretation. Or maybe Michael was always like that, and I did not want to see it. Maybe I was the blind one, the one who built an idealized image of her son that never corresponded with reality. Maybe the grateful child I remembered never really existed. I closed my eyes and breathed deep. The air entered my lungs, filling them with oxygen, but not with relief. Nothing relieved the pain I felt. It was a different pain than the one I felt when my husband died. That was a pain of natural loss, of a completed cycle of love that ended due to inevitable circumstances. This was a pain of betrayal, of unrequited love, of emotional investment that never bore fruit, of realizing too late that you sacrificed your life for someone who does not value it. I opened my eyes and looked at the phone again. I had a message. It was from the lawyer, Robert. Eleanor, good morning. Confirming our appointment for Monday at 10 in the morning to sign the final inheritance documents. Please confirm your attendance. The inheritance, $5 million. The money that had triggered all this painful test. The money that now had a completely different meaning. I breathed deep and started thinking clearly for the first time since I left that apartment. Michael and Sarah knew nothing about the money. They had rejected me believing I was poor, that I was a burden, that I had nothing to offer them. Their decision had been based on that premise. Now I had to decide what to do with that information. I could call Michael right now, tell him about the inheritance, see how he reacted. I imagined the scene, his surprise, his instant regret, Sarah changing her attitude completely. The two of them begging for forgiveness, inventing excuses, trying to regain my favor now that there was money involved. The idea gave me nausea. I did not want that. I did not want a bought love. I did not want my son to come back to me for $5 million. That would be even more painful than his rejection, because it would confirm that he never loved me for who I am, only for what I can give him. And if he came back now, after rejecting me, it would only be for interest. There would be no redemption there. There would be no real reconciliation, only transaction. I stood up. My legs were not trembling so much anymore. I started walking back towards the bus stop. While I walked, the ideas ordered themselves in my head. Michael had made his decision. He had chosen. He chose Sarah over me. He chose comfort over responsibility. He chose selfishness over filial love. That choice hurt, but at least it was clear. Now it was my turn to choose. And my choice was not going to be driven by revenge nor by pain. It was going to be driven
by dignity. I reached the stop and waited for the bus. When I got on, I looked for a seat by the window.
During the entire trip back home, I was thinking, processing, planning. By the time I reached my apartment, I had already made several decisions. The first, I would not tell Michael anything about the inheritance, at least not yet. Not until I decided exactly what to do with that money and with our relationship. The second, I needed time to heal, to process this pain without pressures or rush decisions. The third, and maybe the most important, I needed to redefine who I was without Michael at the center of my life. I entered my apartment, and for the first time in days, I really looked at it. That small place with its old walls and worn furniture. That place that had been my refuge for so long. Now I could buy something better. I could buy a big house in a good neighborhood. I could travel. I could do all those things I could never do because I was always saving, always thinking about the future, always sacrificing myself. And for whom? For a son who considered me a manipulator. For a son who fled from me in the middle of the night. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. I took out an old notebook I had stored in a drawer. Writing had always helped me think. I started making a list. Things I want to do with my life. The first line took me several minutes to write because it implied admitting something difficult. Learn to live for myself, not for Michael, not for anyone else. For me. I kept writing. Find a therapist. Yes, I needed to talk to someone professional about all this. I needed to process the pain in a healthy way, travel to places I always wanted to know, resume hobbies I abandoned, make new friends, help other people, maybe volunteering
At some shelter or community center.
Use the money to do something good in the world, something that gave me purpose beyond being a mother. While I wrote, I felt something strange. It was not happiness. I was still far from that, but it was something similar, liberation.
As if by writing those words, I was finally allowing myself to exist outside the role of selfless mother. As if after 71 years, I was discovering that I could be more than that I should be more than that. That night, I slept better than expected. Not well, but better. I dreamed confusing things, fragments of memories mixed with invented scenes. Michael as a child playing in the park. Sarah closing the door in my face. My husband smiling at me from somewhere far away. The lawyer Robert handing me a giant check. Everything mixed in that nonsense logic of dreams. I woke up early the next day. It was Saturday. I made coffee. I showered. I dressed. I felt different, still hurt, still processing.
But different. Stronger, maybe. Or maybe just more resigned. I took my phone and wrote a message to the lawyer Robert. Good morning. I confirm attendance for Monday at 10 o'clock. I would also like to consult you about options to invest or donate part of the inheritance. I need advice.
Thank you. Send. Then I opened Michael Chat. Our last exchange was from 2 days ago. My message unread, my call unanswered. I started writing. Michael, after what happened yesterday, I understand your position. I am not going to bother you anymore. Everyone makes their decisions and the consequences that come with them. I hope someday you understand what you lost. Not money or material things. You lost someone who loved you unconditionally all your life. That cannot be recovered. Take care. I read the message several times before sending it. It sounded hard, but fair. It sounded final because it was. I pressed send. I saw how the message was delivered. This time, he did read it almost immediately. The 2 checks turned blue. I waited. I saw the 3 dots indicating he was writing something. The dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, his answer arrived. Mom, please do not be like that. Give me time to fix things with Sarah. This is complicated. It is not that I do not love you. I just need space right now. I read his message and felt a mixture of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe him. I wanted to cling to that small sign that he still cared. But another part, the part that had matured painfully in the last days, knew that those were just empty words, excuses, emotional crumbs thrown to keep me close, just in case he needed me in the future. I did not answer. I left the message on read and put the phone away. The rest of the weekend passed in a strange calm. I did not write to Michael again, and he did not insist either. I spent the time organizing my apartment, reading, watching old movies I found on a television channel. Simple things that kept me busy without demanding too much emotionally. On Sunday afternoon, I called an old co-worker, Linda, with whom I had lost contact. We talked for almost an hour. I told her a summarized version of what had happened without mentioning the inheritance.
She listened to me with patience, and in the end, she told me something that stayed with me. Eleanor, children are not investment projects. They are independent people who make their own decisions. Sometimes those decisions hurt us, but we cannot live our lives waiting for them to validate us. Her words were simple but true. Monday came quickly. I got up early. I got ready with care. I chose a light coffee-colored dress I had not worn in years. I combed my hair well. I even put on a little makeup. I wanted to look presentable, dignified, not like the broken woman I had been the last few days, but like the woman who was trying to rebuild herself. I took a taxi to Robert's office. The building was downtown, a modern tower of glass and steel that contrasted with my world of old apartments and dusty streets.
I went up to the 12th floor in a silent elevator with soft music in the background. Robert's office was elegant but cozy. Wood floors, caramel-colored leather furniture, abstract paintings on the walls. The receptionist welcomed me with a smile and offered me coffee. I accepted. Minutes later, Robert came out to greet me. He was a man of about 50. Gray hair, perfectly combed, impeccable dark suit kind, but professional expression. "Eleanor, what a pleasure to see you," he said, shaking my hand. "Come in, please." I followed him to his private office. He sat behind a large dark wood desk, and I settled into a chair in front of him. He started taking documents out of a folder. "I have everything ready for you to sign," he explained. "There are several forms, but I will explain each one. Basically, you are confirming that you accept the inheritance and that you understand the tax implications. There are also documents from the bank where the money will be deposited. Once we sign everything, the process takes about a week, and the money will be available in your account." I nodded and started signing where he indicated my name over and over again. Eleanor Martinez. Every signature felt surreal, as if I were signing the entrance to a completely different life. When we finished with the main documents, Robert closed the folder and looked at me. "You mentioned in your message that you wanted advice on investments or donations," he said. "I would like to help you with that. Tell me what you have in mind." I took a deep breath. "The truth is, I have been thinking a lot these days. I am 71 years old. I lived my whole life with just enough working hard, sacrificing for my son. And now I receive this amount of money that I cannot even imagine completely. I want to use part of that money to live better. Yes, to travel, to have a more comfortable place, to not worry about bills. But I also want that money to mean something. I want to help other people, especially older women who are alone, who were abandoned by their families, who have no resources." Robert nodded, taking notes. "That is a noble idea, Eleanor," he said. "There are several ways to structure this. We could establish a donation fund, create a small foundation, or simply make direct donations to existing organizations that work with that population. Each option has different legal and tax implications. I would like you to give me a few days to prepare a detailed plan with options, and we can meet again to discuss it." "Perfect." I told him there is something else. I paused, doubting if I should tell him, but I needed to say it out loud. My son does not know about this inheritance. I had problems with him recently. He rejected me when he thought I had nothing, and now I do not know if I should ever tell him. I do not know how to handle that situation." Robert looked at me with an expression that mixed professionalism with genuine empathy. "Ela, or legally, you have no obligation to inform anyone about this inheritance. The money is completely yours to do with it what you consider appropriate. That said, and I speak now not as your lawyer, but as someone who has seen many complicated family situations, my advice would be to take your time. Do not make rushed decisions about your son while emotions are fresh. Give it time. Use these next few months to focus on yourself, on healing, on discovering what you really want. Decisions about your son can wait. His words made sense. I nodded slowly. You are right, I said. I need to focus on me first. Robert smiled. Exactly. And when you are ready, if you decide you want to share some of this with your son or not, it will be a decision you make from a place of clarity and not from pain. We said goodbye with a handshake. He told me he would contact me in a few days with the investment and donation plan. I left that office feeling strangely empowered. I went down in the elevator and went out to the street. Downtown was full of life.
Office workers on their lunch hour, street vendors, tourists taking photos. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, simply observing. And then I made an impulsive decision. Instead of taking a taxi back home, I started walking. I entered a bookstore I saw on the corner. I had not bought a new book in years. I always got them used or at the library. I walked through the aisles, touching the spines of the books, reading titles. Finally, I chose 3. One about travel in Europe, another about meditation and emotional healing, and one of contemporary poetry. At the register, when the cashier gave me the total, I took out my card without thinking twice. $75. Before that would have been a fortune for me. Now it was insignificant, but the act of buying it, of not having to count every coin, felt like a small act of freedom. I left the bookstore with my bag of books and kept walking. I passed in front of an elegant restaurant with tables on the terrace. I stopped.
I looked at the menu displayed at the entrance. Dishes that cost what I used to spend on food for a whole week. I went in. The waiter welcomed me with courtesy and took me to a table by the window. I ordered a seafood pasta dish and a glass of white wine. While I waited for my food, I looked around. Couples talking, groups of friends, laughing, people alone like me, but all seeming comfortable in their own company. When my food arrived, it was delicious. Every bite was a small celebration, not of the inheritance itself, but of finally allowing myself to enjoy something without guilt, without thinking if I should be saving that money for something else or for someone else. I ate slowly, savoring. I drank the wine, feeling how it relaxed my tense shoulders. And when I finished and paid the bill, $120 with tip included, I felt good. Not happy yet, but good. I walked a little more before finally taking a taxi home. When I arrived at my apartment, it was almost 4 in the afternoon.
I checked my phone. I had 2 messages. One was from Linda asking how I was. The other was from Michael. My heart gave a little jump when I saw his name. I opened the message. Mom, I need to talk to you. It is important. Can we meet? I looked at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to answer immediately. I wanted to know what was so important. I wanted to believe that maybe he had reconsidered. But the other part, the part that was learning to protect itself, knew
I was not ready yet. I put the phone away without answering. I made myself a tea and sat on the sofa with one of my new books, the one on meditation and emotional healing. I started reading. The first chapter talked about grief. Not only grief for death, but grief for losses of all kinds. Loss of relationships, loss of the version of someone you thought you knew, loss of expectations. Every word resonated in me, as if the author were speaking directly to me. That night before sleeping, I checked Michael's message again. I still had not answered. I decided I would give him an answer, but not yet. Not when he wanted, but when I was ready. For the first time in my life as a mother, I was going to put my emotional needs first. I was going to decide the terms of our relationship, if there was still going to be one. And that felt terrifying, but also necessary. I went to bed thinking about all the things I could do with my new life, places I could visit, people I could help, versions of myself I could discover. 71 years old and barely starting to live for me. How ironic, how sad, how liberating, all at the same time. 3 days passed without me answering Michael's message. 3 days in which he wrote 2 more times. The first message said, "Mom, please answer. I really need to talk to you." The second, more desperate. "Mom, do not ignore me like this. Something happened. I need to see you." Every message made my heart squeeze a little. But I kept my decision. I was not ready. And more importantly, I needed him to understand that I was not at his disposal every time he decided he needed me. During those 3 days, I kept busy. I called Linda, and we agreed to meet for coffee. It was the first time in years I went out socially with someone who was not family. We sat in a small cafe near my house and talked about everything about our years in the factory, about how our lives had changed since then, about her grandchildren who visited her every weekend. I did not tell her about the inheritance, but I did tell her more details about what had happened with Michael. She listened without judging, and in the end, she told me something that felt like a hug. "Eleanor, you deserve people in your life who value you. If Michael cannot be that person right now, then you need to surround yourself with those who can. You are not alone, even if sometimes you feel that way." I also spoke on the phone with the lawyer Robert.
He presented me with several options to structure the donations I wanted to make. The one I liked the most was creating a permanent fund that gave scholarships and financial aid to women over 60 in vulnerable situations. I decided to allocate $1 million for that fund. The rest I would divide among safe investments for my future, a new house travels, and a reserve for emergencies. Robert would take care of all the legal paperwork. I would sign the final papers next week. On Thursday afternoon, 4 days after Michael's last message, I finally decided to answer him, but not in the way he expected. Instead of accepting to see him immediately, I wrote Michael. I received your messages. If you need to talk, we can do it, but it will be on my terms. Sunday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at Central Park at the main fountain. If you do not arrive, there will not be another opportunity. His answer arrived in less than a minute. I will be there, Mom. Thank you. I love you.
I read that I love you with a mixture of skepticism and pain. Easy words to say when something is needed, more difficult to demonstrate with actions when there is nothing to gain. I put the phone away and prepared myself mentally for that meeting. I knew I had to decide what I would tell him, what I would not tell him, and above all, what limits I would establish regardless of what he said. Sunday arrived with a partly cloudy sky. I dressed in comfortable clothes, sandaled pants, and a white blouse. Nothing special. I did not want to look like I was trying to impress him. I arrived at the park 10 minutes before 3. The main fountain was surrounded by families, children running couples sitting on the benches. I found a place with some privacy and sat to wait. Michael arrived on time. I saw him approaching from afar. He walked with quick steps, nervous. He wore jeans and a wrinkled shirt as if he had dressed in a hurry. When he reached where I was, he stopped a meter away.
Mom, he said, thank you for agreeing to see me.
I nodded without saying anything.
I sat down and he sat next to me on the bench, leaving a prudent space between us. There was an uncomfortable silence. Finally, I spoke. You said you needed to talk. I am listening. Michael took a deep breath. Mom, things with Sarah are not right. He started. Since you came to the apartment, we have been fighting a lot. She says horrible things about you, and I cannot take it anymore. I realized you were right. I realized I was a coward. I paused, waiting for him to continue. And she left me, he said with a broken voice. 2 days ago, she told me she was leaving, that I was useless, that I was never going to amount to anything. She packed her things and left. She left me with the apartment rent, with the debts, with everything. And I do not know what to do, Mom. I do not know how I am going to pay everything. That is why I needed to see you. I need your help. There it was.
The truth behind his urgency, the truth behind his, I love you, and his, I need to see you. It was not genuine regret. It was not remorse for how he had treated me. It was need again, always need. I looked him in the eyes. Michael, I said with a calm but firm voice. Let me see if I understood correctly. When you thought I had nothing, when supposedly I had lost everything and needed a place to stay, you and Sarah fled. You left me standing at the door with my suitcases. Sarah told me I was manipulative, dramatic, a burden, and you said nothing. You did not defend me. You did not set limits. You simply accepted everything she said and closed the door in my face. He lowered his gaze.
I know, Mom. I know. I made a terrible mistake. I continued. And now that Sarah left you, now that you find yourself alone with economic problems, now you do remember me. Now you do need your mom.
Not because you love me, not because you really regret it, but because I am useful to you, because you need something from me. He looked up with tears in his eyes. No, Mom. It is not like that, he protested. I really regret it. I really realize the mistake I made. I need you, yes, but not just for money. I need you because you are my mom, and I feel horrible for what I did. His tears seemed real. His pain seemed genuine. But I was no longer the same woman who a week ago would have fallen for those tears. I was no longer the mother who settled for crumbs of regret. Michael, I told him for 30-some years I was there for you every time you needed me. Every time, without conditions, without questions. Gave you everything I had, everything I was. And the first time, the only time I needed you, you failed me. Not only did you fail me, you abandoned me in the cruelest way possible. But Mom, I can change, he said with desperation. Give me a chance to prove it to you. I stayed silent for a long moment. Then I spoke. There is something you need to know, Michael. Something that changes the entire context of this situation. He looked at me confused. What thing, Mom? Nothing. I was never in economic trouble. It was all a test. 2 weeks ago, I received an inheritance from a distant uncle, $5 million. I wanted to know if you would be there for me if I had nothing, and I got my answer. Michael's face changed. It went from confusion to shock, from shock to understanding, from understanding to horror. What? He whispered. 5 million. And you did all this as a test. I nodded. That is right. And you failed Michael completely. He stood up abruptly. I cannot believe this, he said, with a voice starting to rise in volume. You set a trap for me. You manipulated me. This is exactly what Sarah said about you. You are manipulative, Mom. How could you do this to me? I stood up too, looking him straight in the eyes. I did this to you, Michael. I said a test like this, a test that any decent son would have passed without problem. I asked for help believing I had nothing, and you saw. That was your choice, not mine. You chose to abandon me. I only created the circumstances to see your true character. And I saw it. I saw it clearly. He shook his head, visibly upset. And now what, Mom? You came here to rub it in my face. To tell me you have millions while I am broke. To take revenge. I did not come to take revenge. I told him I came to tell you the truth and to set limits. Michael, I love you. You are my son, and you always will be. But I cannot continue being the mother who gives everything without receiving anything in return. I cannot continue expecting you to value me when clearly you do not. So this is what is going to happen. I am going to live my life. I am going to use that money to do things I always wanted to do and to help people who really need it. And you are going to learn to fend for yourself without Sarah, without me, just you. Maybe when you achieve it, when you really grow up and mature, we can rebuild something. But it will not be soon, and it will not be on my previous terms. But Mom, he began to say. I interrupted him. There are no buts, Michael. This is my decision. You can be angry with me. You can think I am manipulative, as Sarah made you believe. You can think whatever you want, but I know the truth. I know I gave you the best of me during your whole life. And if that was not enough, if that did not create in you a sense of loyalty or filial love, then that says more about you than about me. Goodbye, Michael. When you are ready for a real conversation without needing anything from me, you know where to find me. I turned around and started walking. Mom, wait. He shouted behind me, but I did not stop.
I kept walking with trembling but firm legs, with a broken but determined heart, with tears in my eyes, but my head high. I did not look back. I walked through the park with no clear direction for several minutes. The tears finally started falling when I was far enough from Michael. They were not tears of regret for what I had just done. They were tears of liberation, of grief, of closing a painful chapter of my life. I sat on a distant bench under a large tree that offered shade and privacy. I cried in silence while watching the happy families around me. Parents pushing swings, mothers chasing their small children, grandparents sharing ice cream with their grandchildren. Scenes I once dreamed of having with Michael and his future children. Scenes I might never have. But while I cried, I also felt something else. Something I did not expect. I felt peace. A strange, uncomfortable, but real peace. Peace of having told my truth. Peace of having set limits. Peace of having chosen myself for the first time in decades. I took a handkerchief from my purse and dried my tears. I breathed deep. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and flowers. The sun was starting to go down on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Life continued, and I would continue too. I stayed sitting there until the sun set completely. Then I got up and walked towards the park exit. I took a taxi home. During the ride, I looked out the window without thinking of anything specific, just watching the city pass. The lights turning on in the buildings, the people coming out of restaurants and movie theaters, the world turning indifferent to my small personal drama. And that was okay. I did not need the world to stop for me. I just needed to find my place in it. I arrived at my apartment, and the first thing I did was make myself a tea. I sat on the sofa with the hot cup between my hands and turned on the television.
I put on a nature documentary channel. Images of mountains, oceans, forests, places I would someday visit, places I could now visit. I drank my tea slowly while the images transported me far from my apartment, far from my worries, far from the pain. That night I slept deeply. I did not dream anything I remembered, only a black, restful, necessary sleep. I woke up Monday feeling different, lighter, as if I had left a huge weight in that park yesterday. I made coffee, had a good breakfast, and sat down to plan my day. First, I would call Robert to confirm I wanted to proceed with all the plans we had discussed. Second, I would start looking for houses. I did not want something too big or ostentatious, just a more comfortable place with good natural light, maybe a small garden. Third, I would investigate painting or pottery classes. I always wanted to learn some art, but never had time or money. I called Robert at 9 a.m. I confirmed everything. He told me the money was already available in my account, that the donation fund papers would be ready to sign on Friday. He also recommended a trusted real estate agent to look for a house. I thanked him and hung up, feeling productive with purpose. The following days were a mixture of new activities and moments of reflection. I visited 5 houses with the real estate agent. The 5th one was perfect. A small 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. It had a garden with fruit trees, large windows that let in a lot of light, and a spacious kitchen. The price was reasonable, $300,000. I made an offer that same day. It was accepted. The paperwork would take a month, but I already had my new home. I also enrolled in a watercolor class given on Tuesdays and Thursdays at a community center near my future house. The first class was intimidating. I was the oldest in the group, but everyone was kind. The teacher, a young woman named Embelle, was especially patient with me. At the end of the class, I had painted something that vaguely looked like a sunset. It was not good, but it was mine, and that filled me with an unexpected joy. Michael did not contact me again during those weeks. Part of me wondered how he was, if he had managed to solve his problems, if he was still angry with me, if someday he would understand. But I did not look for him. I kept my word. The ball was in his court now. He had to decide what kind of relationship he wanted to have with me, if he wanted to have any. A month later, I moved into my new house. Linda helped me with the process. I hired a moving company that transferred my few belongings from the old apartment to the new house. I bought new furniture,
a comfortable bed, a large gray sofa, a light wood dining table. I decorated the walls with paintings I bought in local galleries. I planted flowers in the garden. Slowly, day by day, that empty space became my home, a reflection of who I was now, not who I had been.
I also started work with the donation fund. Robert connected me with an organization that worked with older women in vulnerable situations. I visited the center. I met some of the women who would benefit from the fund. I listened to their stories, widows without pensions, women abandoned by their families, women who worked their whole life without savings because everything went to their children. Stories that resonated so much with mine that sometimes I had to go out to breathe fresh air so as not to cry in front of them. Seeing the direct impact of the money, seeing how it changed lives, gave purpose to everything that had happened. The inheritance was no longer just money. It was a tool of transformation, not only for me, but for other women who deserve dignity in their golden years. That gave me peace. That gave me meaning. 2 months after our last conversation, I received a letter. It was from Michael, not a text message, a physical letter written by hand, sent by mail. I saw it in my mailbox, and my heart skipped a beat. I took it inside, made myself a tea, and sat on my new sofa to read it. The handwriting was Michael. I would recognize that handwriting anywhere. Mom, it started. I do not know if you will read this. I do not know if you will forgive me someday, but I need to write to you, even if you do not answer. 2 months have passed since the park. 2 months in which I have had to face myself in ways I never had done. I lost my apartment. I am living in a rented room, sharing a bathroom with 3 other tenants. I got a job in a warehouse carrying boxes. It is not glamorous, but it is honest. I am paying my debts little by little. The letter continued. At first, I was furious with you. I thought you had tricked me, that you had set a cruel trap for me. But with time, I started to understand. You did not set a trap, Mom. You gave me a chance to be the son I should have always been. And I failed. I failed because Sarah had convinced me that you were the problem, because it was easier to blame you than to assume my responsibility, because I never really grew up. My eyes filled with tears reading his words. He continued, "Now I understand everything you sacrificed for me. Now that I have to work hard just to pay rent, I understand what it meant that you worked 3 shifts to give me school supplies. Now that I am alone, I understand the value of having someone who loves you unconditionally. And I lost that. I lost the only person who was always there for me. For being a coward, for being selfish, for being blind." The last part of the letter said, "I am not writing to ask you for money. I am not writing to ask you to forgive me yet. I know I do not deserve it. I am writing to tell you
that I am sorry. I really am sorry, Mom, and that I am working on being better, on being the man you deserved as a son.
I do not know if someday we can rebuild our relationship, but I want you to know that I love you. I always loved you. I just did not know how to show it. Take care, Mom. Michael. I finished reading the letter with tears running down my cheeks. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of something complex. Hope mixed with caution. Love mixed with pain. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer of my desk. I would not answer yet. I was not ready yet, but I kept it because maybe someday I would be. That night, I sat in my garden under the stars. The cool night air caressed my face. I thought about everything that had happened, about the inheritance that changed my life, about the test that revealed painful truths, about the confrontation that liberated me, about the transformation that was just beginning. I was 71 years old. Most of my life had already passed. But for the first time, I felt I was really living, not for someone else, for me. And if Michael really changed, if he really matured and became the man he promised to become in that letter, maybe someday we could have a new relationship. Not like before. Never like before, but something different. Something built on honesty and healthy boundaries. Something real. But if not, if this was all we would have, that would also be okay. Because I learned something fundamental in these months. I learned that my value did not depend on being needed. I learned that self-love was not selfishness. I learned that it is never too late to start over. And I learned that sometimes the greatest proof of love you can give is letting go even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Because only in freedom, in distance, in the pain of consequence, can people really grow. I looked at the stars and whispered a promise to the universe. A promise to live the rest of my days with dignity, with purpose, with self-love. I had received $5 million. But the most valuable thing I won was not the money. It was recovering myself, and that was priceless.